So the next. So welcome to the April 19th, 2023 Hudson Park Advisory Council meeting. Everyone should have received an agenda. On that agenda is a attendance form, and I've asked that everybody please sign into attendance. We'll give you a minute or so. We'll also post it in the chat for those that don't have the attendance form, the agenda. And I don't know if you can post the agenda also. If, I'm going to be other than my best. You're a superstar at this. I'm going to use only positive vibrations during this record, right? So everyone also who's a member should have received the minutes earlier today from Ted Shank of the Hudson Park Trust. They are very long, but they're also very accurate. Thank you, Tammy, for putting those together. I would like a motion to approve the minutes.
Can I present some minor tweaks?
Absolutely, yeah.
Feel free to email your tweets.
I know that's why it's saved.
So what we'll do is we won't actually vote on them, but what we'll do is Robert send it to me. I'll take a look at them and then we can post them there. Okay. I didn't have time to read the pieces, but
I think sometimes we should be talking about voting, not voting. And,
little things like that. Okay.
And yeah. It's not that signage is prohibited, jet skis are prohibited. So like I'll send.
Yeah.
Okay.
Apologies.
So also in your agenda and what was said, hopefully everybody was able to read a short 3-paragraph letter. It's going to become a letter, but I wanted to open it up for discussion. It's the response to DEC's and Patrick Foster's response to us and our questions and answers. And we have a very brief response to that, and we also have a little bit more background. I was wondering if everybody's had an opportunity to read it and if there are any comments on it. It was passed by the executive committee on Tuesday of the Hudson Park Advisory Council. I don't know if Tom Fox is here to give it a little preamble, but if Tom is here, I'd love to elevate him and allow him to wrap it up, to summarize it. Otherwise, I can. I'm here. Well, maybe what I'll do is I'll try to summarize it. Tom is on a bike trip, so he's in Virginia today. But ultimately, what we're asking is that maybe it makes sense for the monitoring of the heat temperature off of Pier 98 to be very close to the water pipe underneath where it's emanating rather than far away, so we can get actual real heat temperatures that might affect fish life and their health, as well as just overall understanding that they are a member of the Hudson Park Trust Board, and its responsibility is to protect the estuary and wildlife. That anything that we can do to maintain the health of the river is important to the advisory. That's ultimately what the short form says. It had time. I also attached a longer form that goes into more detail, but something that we're probably not going to be actually issuing as our letter. And a letter probably will be sent to the DEC and to the government and copying the trust, but being a partner of the trust. Anybody have any questions about the letter as written?
I do have a question. It was 68,000, not 58, and that's non-motorized voters only. We can motorized voters as well.
So 68?
68,000 non-motorized voters.
Correcting it on the fly here. If you open up your link, you'll see Tammy at work here. So she's really changed that. Are there any other revisions? Any other questions or comments?
If you can't find the link, I dropped it in the chat.
Why don't I give everybody it takes literally a minute to read. Why doesn't everybody go ahead and read it? And then we'll open it up and then we'll ask members of the advisory council to approve the letter. And if it's approved, we'll send it to you.
Everybody's so terrified of the microphones. Silence, just deafening.
And it's hilarious, because I know when they're home, they're all.
Well, we have to mute ourselves,
It's
like,
true.
like
It's
we're
crazy,
used to Zoom call.
I mean, maybe it should just reference the background document as a footnote or something and say that, you know, additional information here or additional concerns outlined here.
Sure, I guess, so that's also, you want to put a link to that as well?
We discussed the lengthier.
Yeah, the lengthier one was revised again.
Got it.
With very, oh, you read, so you're talking about the one that I sent you the other day.
Just about the exact discussion that we had, I wanted to just,
There were, yeah, correct.
so exec just felt it made sense to go with this more succinct letter and not really the lengthier one. So unless we send a lengthier one, we can't reference it.
We could denote that background information can be provided upon request if you'd like.
I mean, just since you went to the work of creating a longer document, just to maybe just say that it, yeah, that's a good way. It exists.
If we sent out the letter and created a link to the longer form, would you maybe post that somewhere on the advisory council without sending it out? So they can refer to it on the, on our
I mean, I
website.
think if people want the lengthier letter, we should just, if we have it, and that's kind of what we want to do.
It's in the, agenda.
And it's in the chat.
I think the sort of the feedback we had was that we aren't the experts in it, but this is our opinion and recommendation, and so accordingly, a shorter letter that might be read because it's also 3 paragraphs, was sort of the summary, but you know, I guess we do have the detail.
For clarity on Mary's comment in the executive, it was revised thereafter. So it was actually much longer and possible, to say,
Sure.
the second version. So it was revised since the first revision that was sent out by Tom. And so it was toned down substantially. So maybe what I can do in this is, you know, provide, usually we email this out. I can provide a digital, just a link here for more background that can exist. Either I can host it or the trust can host it. But I don't think there's anything in the long form version that's kind of, it's more informational. There's nothing, there's no finger pointing. It's just, this is why we came to the conclusion that we did. This is more facting. It's really pretty soft.
But ask the right questions that we need, more information,
Mm-hmm.
more engagement.
So let me refer to it and we'll figure out a way for we'll keep the letter as it is, more information will provide.
I mean, the letter as it is has the 2 specific asks, you know, that they consider improving the monitoring. And that there be a firm limit of this number of days per year, right? Those are the 2 specific things we're asking for.
Yeah, I think just saying that it's available if they want it. I mean, all of that data came from either Con Ed or DEC anyway. This is Mary.
So Mary, the longer form that was attached in the agenda, have you been able to read that?
Yeah, and I was just worried there was one thing that and I think it was just poor wording. Made it sounded like steam exhaust water was going right into the Hudson, which I don't believe is true. And I think it was just poor wording, but I felt like the more technical you get, the more specific you get, you really have to check all that technical data. And I know Tom feels like he did, but I thought it just ran the chance of if anything was wrong, the whole thing would get dismissed. I didn't have any real opposition to it, but I thought the shorter version said what we needed it to say, and we wouldn't run into any problems like that.
And Rob, I'm gonna probably not submit based on Mary's recommendation. It seems like it'll be cleaner. We'll have it for our records. Or with a little footnote, more information available on the request.
Great.
Okay. So all in favor of adopting the letter? Actually, let's do it another way. It's gonna be easier. Any objections to adopting the letter and sending it to appropriate parties? Okay. Please speak up.
Well, there's Tom was now on.
Oh, Tom, did you, thank you so much for putting all the work and effort into this letter. you able to, we able to hear your voice? Tom, you're muted.
No. He's riding this bike.
Might be quite loud. Tom, we'll give you, you know what, if you just start speaking during the meeting, you're gonna unmute, we'll give you an opportunity, but the short form letter passed. And we're gonna hold on to the long form letter, we're just gonna refer to it as we have more information on it. Okay, so we are going to move on to the next item on our agenda. It's, we're talking about the Greenway next. All right. Yes, so as we know, the Greenway is repaving and everyone should have received the trust report. I think it was sent yesterday at late afternoon. All right. And since Robert here wrote the report or knows more than anyone else about the repaving, he can give us a little background, but let me first start by saying that a little history is that the Manhattan Borough President's Office, Mark Levine's office held a press conference about this time last year and recommended an alternative route for ever increasing e-bikes and large deliveries, that the syncopation of slow bicycle riders along with fast moving mopeds and other electric and gas powered vehicles that we see so often on the Greenway needs to be addressed at some point. And without a plan, just saying we need to investigate this, create a study. We had representation from, I think Jeffrey was there, I was there, Shirley was there, Janine was there. I thought you did have somebody from CB1.
RJ was there, your council member, I can't
So,
remember.
yes,
who the
and
board was, but-
so there was a lot of support for this alternative, fast-moving lane without, just basically a study saying, where can we put this lane? Should it be on the east side of 9A? Should it be on the west side of 9A? But what we do know is that, deliveries are not going away. So CB2 met with Aya Keefe, and she asked us to write a resolution in support of further investigation of an alternative Greenway path. And since we were given very little information on the New York State Department of Transportation's plans on repaving the Greenway, I've learned a lot in the last 24 hours that you can mill and repave really within a very short period of time. That kind of led itself to saying, well, why not do a very quick test, a 24-hour test, to see how badly the traffic on 9A is affected by creating an alternative path, which we need to create anyway for cyclists. So CB2 wrote a resolution that passed the executive committee yesterday unanimously. And I wanted to open it up to discussion. I don't have anything for anybody to read.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Can it-
All
I'm
right.
sorry. I've been pushing all sorts of things on my phone for the last 20 minutes to figure out how to talk. I'm in a cabin up in the Blue Ridge Parkway. Yeah, I just wanted to say the only thing that's mentioned in the longer version of the letter is that the heated water is used 188 days a year for the cooling of the cables. Every day they use 1 million gallons of city water. And that's what has the selenium, the lead, the chloroform, the chlorine in it in trace amounts, but it has it in it. And the longer form suggests that they explore with the trust options to either recycle the water, which would save the money, one would think, or have it disposed of at the North River Sewage Treatment Plant where municipal wastewater is supposed to be disposed of. That's the only difference between the short one and the long one. And Mary wasn't sure that 1 million gallons of water was used every day for steam, but they've mentioned that at CB4, at our advisory council. And it was in the Times article as well, in their research. So there's two sources of water coming out. One is the the river water, which is being used to cool the cables. The second is the fresh water, which is being used to create steam and then dispose of directly in the river.
Great, I think Mary has a question for you, Tom.
Sure,
Question.
shoot.
I think this actually proves my point about the more technical you get, the
Right.
more chance you have of an error, because what I was trying to say, I don't question the amount of water they're using or the amount of the discharge. What I question is that they're dumping steam into the river.
They're not done. I didn't say steam. I said the water.
Right.
Well, after they make the steam, the water's condensed, it goes through a reverse osmosis system, and then it is that water is discharged into the river.
Okay, well, if that's true, it is really wasteful and it's contrary to how most steam plants work, but that's what I questioned. I just questioned
Right.
if it's correct. That's all.
Don't think it's gonna change what we just passed. I'd prefer not to put it to another vote, but I do think that we should make it available, the long form letter for anyone that wants to dive deeper into it.
And it should be a desirable outcome if the trust and DEC see that it is wasteful, and maybe Con Ed will want to save some money on the water they consume. Thanks a lot, guys.
One second, Tom, we got a question by Robert or a comment?
I'll just note that the Hudson River Park Trust has absolutely zero experience or knowledge on the inner workings of steam plants in New
Of
York City.
course.
No expertise in it. And so we, in fact, you can ask us to participate in that, but we, much like I think many of you, will have little to nothing to add.
Okay,
Well, then
anything else?
let them figure it out themselves. Thank you.
Well, we're gonna,
Okay.
the letter passed, we're gonna go ahead and send it. Do you have her?
Yes, I noticed. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Well,
Have a good
thanks
evening,
again,
folks.
Tom,
I'm
for
gonna
all
have to
your
jump.
work for this. You're
You're
truly a great
welcome.
partner. Thank you.
And go Greenway.
So picking back up on the Greenway, I want to open it for discussion. I'm not sure what to do because the new information that, that we're doing it in sections and it only takes a short period of time, even though it hasn't touched CB2 yet. And it does seem it's not going to be quite as interruptive to you, Robert, and the events that you're planning, but you don't know. But I still think a letter should be written asking for more communication, more schedules, plans of the rerouting, but at the same time, it almost has the ship sailed, Robert, in the ability to be able to, even for 24 hours, to create an alternative lane. If they were able to take, like, for instance, all of CB2's area from 14th Street, down to Canal and try this out, because it's not a very heavily trafficked area pretty much any time of the day, except for rush hour into Canal, which often is closed. So as someone who lives there and doesn't see traffic going southbound, and northbound's a little different story because it can back up around Chelsea Piers. But the question is, we know from traffic studies that if you go from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, it generally doesn't create more traffic, doesn't create more backups. And it is 4 lanes.
I want to add, on my bike ride to work today, they repaved 36 to 44. And I am now even more nervous about the increase in gas for high-powered e-bikes on the Greenway, given how, as just a lay cyclist, I felt like I was flying because of how newly smooth it was. Also, I couldn't believe how quickly they milled and paved this pretty significant windy section of the Greenway too. So definitely, I think it's important that we figure out how to leverage this moment. We were not successful at the peak of the pandemic doing it, so using this as a moment to sort of pilot something is at least an opportunity to, if they don't do it, we get to say, well, we asked you here, and still nothing. So, building the paper trail, I think, is important.
And just to be clear, we're not talking about taking anything away from the trust, we're not, or the park itself, we're not talking about changing the landscaping, we're actually talking about moving into 9A, which is a New York State decision, but it's been very difficult for us to get to the table.
So a question, so is the idea that, just to make sure I understand what you guys are proposing, is like the idea that they would open up this alternative pathway for e-bikes based on their construction schedule for repaving?
Our
And-
recommendation is that now is the perfect time to test to see how it actually affects traffic. And I've been told by Mark Levine's office that there's a big announcement, whatever that is, coming in early May. And we'd like to see support from different community organizations that we would support such a e-bike fast-moving lane.
But specifically tied to, which I'm all good with, but specifically tied to the repaving project.
My
And-
initial thought was, this is gonna take a long time, they're doing it in small sections. I did not understand that it happens only between 9 PM and
Yeah,
5
yeah, yeah.
AM. That's all new information, so that changes things a little bit, but it doesn't erase the need for a place for safe e-biking and safe cycling.
Yeah, I guess my concern is that, I mean, I think having a resolution in support of taking away a lane from the highway to allow for that on a pilot basis makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't necessarily think that tying it to the repaving schedule or this project, I think that might just overly complicate it. I mean, if you're really gonna pilot it, you'd want to pilot it for a week at least, I think, to see how the highway performs under different conditions and, different peak travel hours. And I'd be scared about them saying, well, it doesn't work because of the repaving, not it doesn't work because
Yeah,
it's not, you know what I mean? Like I'm think separating it might actually be better.
Yeah, we were tying it together because it seemed like a perfect opportunity. The new information seems as though it's maybe more, I mean, what's necessary to happen? They need to take those dangerous bollards that exist, the dividers, what they call it, the protective, the long lane dividers. They need to take them, they need to take up a lane or half a lane or whatever it might be. Put it on, I'm not an urban designer, but on the west side of the street, line it down like a mile and see how much traffic is affected. And it's, while you're paving, but why they haven't started paving between 14th and Canal. Why not create that? We don't even know what the rerouting is. We don't know what the detour is. There's no place to detour on the east side of the street because you have Leroy construction, you have the Google's construction. It's very dangerous over on the side. You can't even walk. So I would imagine that if they're going to create a safe avenue, they're going to have to go into the west side of 9A. So why not try it out now, have cameras up, see what kind of traffic patterns happen. So I do think it can be tied in to the repaving, not for the entire area, because where Jeffrey is, it's very different by the Intrepid than it is down here.
For
And
like
then
a
it
small
gets
section. Okay, that was
dangerous by where
unclear.
Tammy is.
I
because
still
of the
think we
right
should
turns.
do it, regardless of the condition along the Greenway. Just use the moment.
Well, the other thing we gotta take a look at and consider, that we talked about in one is cargo bikes, right? Cargo bikes do not belong on the Greenway, and we frequently see them. The new laws will allow cargo bikes to be 36 inches, which is to 54 inches wide. That just doesn't fit on the Greenway. We don't want it even attempting to get on the Greenway. A street, lovely paved, following traffic rules and traffic enforcement would be fantastic. A girl can train.
I'll just chime in, the bollards along the bikeway for security reasons are spaced at 48 inches.
That's gonna cause a problem with 54-inch bikes.
Just wanted to throw it out there.
That's right. But we have 36-inch cargo bikes that Whole Foods uses now, but the rules were changed to allow up to 54 inches. So, I mean, how many places are cargo bikes gonna be? Are they gonna be in the bikeway and street and sidewalks?
Tammy, I have a question. Oh, I have a question. Does anybody know about the DOT's plan to put more micro hubs, is what they were calling it, cargo bike stations around Lower Manhattan? We saw an email about that about a week ago and then haven't heard anything else yet. Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
There was, the Department of DOT released its RFP in response, or it released I think, responses to its RFP about establishing 20 micro hubs around the city.
Okay,
I didn't see where they were specifically cited in sort of Lower Manhattan.
right. We started to look into it, but couldn't find the information we were
And
looking
I
for. So
think,
I don't know if
I
that
don't know
will
if
also
all the
increase.
details have been studied either,
Okay,
so.
I have a recommendation.
I know we've been.
My hand is raised when I can ask a question, please.
Yeah, you know what we'll do is we'll ask everybody here, in respect, who raise your hand, and Lynn, I actually had whispered, that we're gonna.
I was typing Lynn, you're next, so
I'm sorry.
that's okay, you're.
No problem.
It's everything, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I guess my question is, if e-bikes generally do not respect, I mean, they use the greenway because they don't have traffic lights. Why would they be stopping for traffic lights in a dedicated lane of 9A? And how does it make it any safer for pedestrians to have a dedicated lane for e-bikes when they're not going to stop at the signals?
Excellent question, and Lynn, we talked about that at CB2, and we've actually had resolutions in the near, and actually I spoke to Robert about it, and he sent me that, that delivery companies are supposed to have identifiers for delivery bikes, and they're not wearing them. They're supposed to have vests with numbers, so that, and if you add a couple speed cameras and red light cameras, you will actually certainly make an impact. And I think that that's something that I spoke to Deborah Glick about, is how do you get these e-bikes to stop at crossings? Because we're certainly not gonna get anything approved, we give them a highway right through public crossings. So I think there's a second step to this that enforces not only individual cyclists, but on companies like Uber Eats and DoorDash and others, that you have to wear identifiers so that if you're breaking the law, the company that you work for gets fined.
Okay, and just so you know, from where we're gonna go when we start doing hybrids is one in the room, one online, one in the room, one online. So Graham's next, and then we'll see who's next. Hector's next, sorry.
Yes, he was.
Hector online, then Graham.
Okay, I have an idea, I don't know how. to do it, but we have an opportunity to combine the two projects. We all know that the Army Corps of Engineers came in to do some flood mitigation estimates and propose some plans. Maybe we can somehow incorporate the new bike roadway into that plan somehow, because it's something's gonna happen anyway on a bike path eventually. Maybe the thought could be, instead of taking a road, highway lane, similar to the east side where they expanded out into the water a bit, we can possibly do the same thing on the Hudson. And we can also do some flood mitigation in the process. And I know it may impact some of the wildlife, but there has to be studies on that as well. But they might even cut down on the cost if you hit 2 for 1.
It's an excellent point, and it's a time of change now on the west side, and there's a lot happening, and it's the time to talk about options. Go ahead and call people. I agree that we didn't, when we wrote the resolution for CB2, we could have written a 100-page resolution, but we tried to
Katie, I
keep
see
it
you, you're
focused.
next. Go ahead, Katie. Go ahead, Katie. Katie, can you unmute?
No, we can't hear you.
She doesn't have.
Oh, it might be the button on your headset.
Okay, yeah, you can hear me now, sorry. It took me a minute. I have something in the chat. Can we get closed captions? Some of you, the timbre of your voice comes through beautifully, but some of you are, like the last speaker, the voice doesn't register. So is there any way so that we could get closed captions so we could hear you better? Just trying to participate. Thank you.
I'm looking at it right now.
So can you hear me, Katie?
You're great. Daniel has got the right voice.
So what Hector recommended is that we tie in the Army Corps of Engineers resiliency plan to the creation of an additional e-bike lane, somehow mentioning that 9A has to be redesigned, has been spoken about, but let's carve out some space for this important transportation lane for alternative transportation. I would also love to hear from Anna too, from Transportation Alternatives, if she can shed any light on their studies. And then if she has a comment on this as well.
Sure, happy to. First, I would say that I agree with you what you said. Taking a drive lane has been proven not to produce more congestion. It's the concept called as induced demand. So I agree also with, I'm sorry, I don't know all of the names, so I can't remember who spoke, but having a trial or a pilot for 24 hours tied to to the repaving, I think would be very short to actually be able to see any results. I'm sure, now I'm speaking for myself, but I can go back to TA, but we would be supportive of asking for a study to look at this, letter of support from TA saying that, as you said, e-bikes and micromobility devices are not going anywhere. People are going to still use them. So we need to find a way to make sure that there's safe infrastructure and space for them to move at the speed that they move. If it's limited, better. But having them interact the least possible, or like provide, like try to decrease the conflicts with pedestrians who are the most vulnerable and with other bikers that are not going at that speed. So taking a drive lane, I think, would be the ideal solution that we would support. And I would say that I saw Tom Fox's presentation to CB1, going through the history of all Route 9A and Hudson River Park as it used to be and how they did all of the improvements. And he was mentioning that tied to the Army Corps study right now could be a good way of addressing both issues that we've been talking about lately. I don't know if going into the water would be the best solution, but definitely I think all of those things tie into a more complex problem that we should definitely be looking at. And if everything went in the same direction with the same objective, it would be better. So happy to participate in any additional conversations and bring more of the data that we have at TA. We're going to be releasing a report in the coming month about micromobility and our recommendations. So yeah, we're very interested in that.
Before you leave, I see your hand is up, Katie, but I want to ask Anna a question. Do you have any research or any knowledge of how best to deal with the identifiers of these, big delivery companies? And do you know that there is a law, New York City law, that exists that they should be wearing vests with identification numbers?
I don't know if we have research. I can go back and ask. I'm sure if there is a law, we have numbers on that. I will say that many of the issues, I don't know, or concerns that we have when you're identifying is that it ends up targeting communities that are more vulnerable. I think e-bikes are different than mopeds. There's one of the issues that we see is that every device falls under the name of e-bike, but they're not the same. Some of them are pedal assist, they don't go as quick, they're not as heavy. Others just have a throttle, you go. Mopeds should not be there, they're not legal, they're all over the city. The problem is, like, they should have to go after the people that are selling them and are putting them on our streets when they're not legal and they have no licenses. So there's a lot of issues that fall under e-bikes that are not necessarily the same. I am happy to go back to our research team and give you more data on the licensing and identification and what we have on our end, if that is helpful.
That'd be very helpful. Thank you.
We're gonna go Graham in the room, Katie, and then Tracy.
Just first to comment on getting the Army Corps involved. They have no funding from Congress. Congress is not going to do anything soon. If your time frame is this decade, forget about the Army Corps. Being as we have a representative assembly member in the room, I would say that the solution is that commercial e-bikes have a black box on board that records velocity, direction, and position, GPS position. The technology exists. It's something the state should mandate, right? I understand what TA is saying about these people who ride, but look, they hurt people. They hit people, they hurt people. There used to be children riding on the bike path, now there aren't, right? So if you want children riding on the bike path, you've got to make the e-bike safe. The technology exists. It's really up to the state legislators to require, as have some European countries, that some sort of black box exists on every commercial e-bike.
Does Rebel have that technology? I think they.
Look, when you
One
rent,
of them has some technology that IDs if the vehicle's in an unauthorized space.
Graham, are you done?
I'm done.
Okay, so from Graham to Katie,
I actually was going to say something very similar to Graham. The Army Corps of Engineer process, when it begins, is going to take a long time. So, I think we certainly should put it on the wish list in that project, but we have to think of something in the meantime. And I'm heartened to hear, I know that it's an issue falling on communities of even more marginalized communities, but can be very frightening to have, bikes that are just all over the place and going so quickly. So I'm glad to hear that there are some, efforts in this group to talk about that and address those issues. Thank you.
Yep.
There we go.
So I took note of that, Graham. I'll bring that back to the assembly member, but I was going to say, and maybe we'll kick it to a city council person here. The city council just is passing or did just pass a bunch of things that are like sort of a bill of rights for delivery workers. And they've been doing a lot around trying to create charging stations for delivery workers. So maybe through the council, there could be some really low tech mandate to wear a vest with an identifying number. That sounds really easy and inexpensive, and maybe it could be bundled into something that the council's already working on to help support delivery workers.
I think we also need enforcement. I think the
Right.
problem is I think I can count on one hand how many times I've seen enforcement set up on the Greenway. And it's usually a big show of force for one particular time, one particular month to launch a season, and then you don't see anybody. It's kind of like speeding on a highway. Either if nobody's there, then who's watching?
So are we writing a letter to, was it NYPD that would do enforcement? Is it state troopers? Who was the? I know we've talked about this in the past. I'm sorry, I don't remember
Well,
exactly.
who monitors the red light cameras? It's DOT, right?
Okay.
So I think cameras have to be in place for enforcement because it's not gonna work with manpower. It's gonna have to be technology, I believe.
And it would be only feasible if each e-bike that's a delivery or a cargo bike or Rebel scooter had a black box. Okay, please do. Katie, Katie's gone, so that's somebody, Teresa's in the room, sorry, Mary, and then Hector. Mary, you're next.
Yep. Yeah, I just looked up the city law about delivery bikes and put a link in the chat. There is a little bit in there about e-bikes, but I think if we're interested in it and making the rules about delivery bikes apply to delivery e-bikes as well, that's probably something that would not be difficult to convince a city council member to work on.
So I'm just gonna read this from the site that Robert shared with me. Equipment for the cyclist must include a 3-digit ID number for each bicyclist. I mean, there are many other requirements and charging stations and safety mechanisms, but we'll share the NewYorkCity.gov site with you. I just sent it to Tammy and she'll put it in the chat. But this isn't, this is something that I want to continue to talk about. Maybe try to get funding for it, but I do think yeah, that's further down. It's on the same side. Yeah, it's under
It's
under equipment for the cyclist. Yeah. So I encourage everybody to read it, and then, but it's not really what we're talking about in terms of creating a testing area to see how much the traffic is backed up. For Anna, we don't think that it will likely. Maybe it's just a very short period of time. These lane dividers are, appear out of nowhere. It shouldn't be too difficult to create a safe lane for a short period of time, just purely to see whether or not we're really affected by one less lane on the west side of 9A. There are other issues, as Tammy will tell you, because it will come to an end, because it doesn't work for the entire length of 9A and Hudson River Park.
But I also think that, we're all talking about permanency here and what we'd like to permanence and then temporary solutions and things like that. I think of the commuter lanes if you're going out, if you come out of the Midtown Tunnel and there's that nice machine that picks up and moves the giant concrete things that opens and closes lanes, maybe that's something that we need to sort of investigate whether that's an option and request DOT to look at that. So maybe there is a bike lane during whatever hours, rush hour, whatever the case is, or needs are, that isn't, that's a temporary basis that could be picked up and put away, and kind of start to figure out how we need it. I am concerned about any permanent measures going in before we figure out resiliency going up the west side, because the wall, the tree, the deployable, the whatever we do has to go somewhere in between the edge of the park and the east side of West Street and the buildings there. So maybe we have an opportunity to carve out a special lane for cargo bikes and motorized e-bikes and do something resilient that protects everything. And again, kind of like Congressman Van Goldman was talking about, a city and state task force that we can bring together that really looks at the whole thing to solve not only resiliency, but our transportation.
Is there anyone here from the Manhattan Borough President's Office? Maybe they can, I know that, you know, Keith was letting me know that there is a plan to announce something in May, and I'm sure it's not ready to be announced, but rather than speaking for that office, it'd be great if a representative wanted to shed some light on it, if anyone is here. No, don't see anyone? Okay. Keeping up with.
Yeah, somebody had mentioned something about enforcement. One of the issues the police are running into is that to enforce it, it's very dangerous. So you have these bikes going at high speed. And there was issues where cops have tackled some of them, and they end up getting sued because basically, you know, they use the excessive force supposedly. So we have to decide if we want safe bike lanes or we're gonna end up blaming the cops for doing their job. Now, I'm not saying this is, you know, the best idea, but Thailand had similar issues that we're having right now at the beginning. They're very extreme in what they do over there, but there must be something we could use over there, possibly to incorporate it, especially the enforcement.
This is a little bit, well, related but not e-bikes, but I'm Natalie from State Senator Hoyleman's People's Office. So just want to let everyone know we did request funding in the budget this year for our 9A study, so 800,000. So I'm not sure, obviously the budget is not finalized yet, but we'll see what happens with that.
Seeing no other questions online, next.
We still have a law that doesn't allow electric bikes on the greenway. It seems to me, but they are allowed in Riverside Park, and Riverside Park South. And there's nothing, well, there's a sign there, but it doesn't say you're in a different park. And the thing that seems so simple without having to tackle anybody is that if right there by the sanitation station where there's probably some room on the side, is that they simply go out with their force and have a barrier on this so that everyone has to stop and go through the barrier. And that the people who are on electric bikes could be told that they're not legal and please go, turn left and go over to the city streets, and everybody else can go straight. It's not a matter of catching anybody. Somebody's coming along, unless they're going at a speed that they're out of control and they can't stop when they see a stop barrier in front of them. It should be safe and controllable. And I think that if that happens very often, then you will also get the e-bikes lobbying with us and getting more support for the lane.
We did the same thing you're saying at Chambers, sir.
Yeah.
I don't know if that will stop them from going through.
No, but no, if there's simply a barrier there that where the police are there and you come up and there may be a backup of some people, but they go through one at a time and where they have to slow down to go through there.
I just don't think it's a priority right now for NYPD to enforce.
No,
And I don't think they're gonna get any officer. I don't think they're gonna get the officers to actually.
Well, even if you didn't ticket, if you simply said, this isn't permitted, please leave the greenway, and it sort of creates a message, at least that it's that in fact, this is the rules here in Hudson River Park. It's different than where you just came.
PEP doesn't have any jurisdiction on the Greenway, or does it?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to clarify this. The bikeway and the Greenway is in fact not Hudson River Park. And I want to just be clear about it. Like we say it all the time. I know people, it's immediately adjacent to us. It is built as part of the highway with federal highway funds. It is not part of Hudson River Park. So there is no PEP officer standing out there on the Greenway saying this is Hudson River Park, because it is not. PEP is limited. They are the Parks Enforcement Patrol. They are limited to be in the park. They do not do enforcement on the Greenway. They are able to assist with enforcement at, say, particularly intersections of crossings into the park. There's, I say, like the Fisher Street Plaza, in which the park and the crosswalk and the Greenway are almost one. But it is incidental. There will never be a task or assigned to do enforcement specifically on the Greenway, because it again is not part of a park, and so therefore is outside of their jurisdiction. The jurisdiction and the responsibility for enforcement on the Greenway falls solely with the NYPD or state police.
But as a body that is very serious about safety in the park, and this affects entering and exiting, it's very much an issue that we do discuss, and we should be discussing at Vice Council. Is there any other questions? Otherwise, I just want to wrap up what we might be able to do. Obviously, time is not on our side. If we want to do, if we do in principle agree to a small area to test and get that letter written, and then I can disperse it to the EC and then everyone else, and then just get a very simple 2-paragraph letter out saying this is a good time and we support it. And that way we can give it to the Manhattan Borough President's Office, and they can use it yet as another piece of evidence that to get New York State DOT talking about. Is any?
Yeah, I guess just a friendly amendment to that idea. I guess I would suggest that the letter be focused on using a lane of 9A as a through route for electric micro mobility. And it's a way to tackle, whether it's e-bikes or cargo bikes or, all the things that are crowding the parks Greenway, if I can use that term, as well as potentially a way of meeting the city's micro mobility goals and helping with enforcement to the degree that if my guess is some of the e-bike riders, if they're on a city street with a traffic light, they're going to take that more seriously than they would than they do on the Greenway. That'd be my sort of not
Could you
substantiated
help me
guess.
with the language of that? You can say no.
And then suggest this is an opportune time, but I wouldn't tie it directly to that.
When you were so knowledgeable about micromobility and the increased use of e-bikes and how important it was to create a safe passage. I mean, I can write it, but almost getting a co-author like yourself from Transportation Alternatives would be, I think, add weight.
Yeah, definitely. I would happily help, though I will say I'm not sure that TA will be behind the fact of enforcement. If it's automatic, yes. If it's getting NYPD to enforce directly, I'm not sure TA would be.
I don't think we're going to add enforcement. I think that's a totally separate topic, something that I don't think we should actually address in this.
Yeah.
I think that's important to Deborah Glick and pedestrian safety. And I think that's why we're going to pick that up at a different discussion than this one.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I mean, we believe that we understand that there's issues all around the city, and there's a lot of people that are not following the rules. They're going the wrong way, they're riding where they shouldn't be, and they're making it unsafe for pedestrians and other cyclists. But we think it comes down to actually having more space and better infrastructure. Because if there is space, we've seen data that shows that once you put a bike lane and it's protected and it's two-way, people stop riding on the sidewalks or stop going where they shouldn't be going. So definitely happy to help on that.
Oh, no, that's okay.
I just want to interrupt for 1 quick second. I cannot add closed captions from where I sit. So if you don't mind in the room enunciating and speaking up towards the microphone, that would be fantastic.
I think we should also consider attaching our 2022 letter on the topic to show that we have a history advocating for this in a sensible way. And totally, I think all of what was laid out as friendly is appropriate, and this can be pretty succinct. So I would make that motion that we move forward with that.
Second. Recusals, abstentions? All in favor, so we'll write a letter, we'll circulate it, and we'll try to get it done this month before our next meeting. So that it actually has an impact.
Are we approving the letter at the next meeting on
No,
review?
we want to, I think we're gonna have to approve it via email. Because I think early May is what I was told that Manhattan Borough President's Office is talking specifically about this alternative lane. And I think we want to get it out there before that discussion.
I may abstain.
Okay.
I just need to see what it says.
No, we're going to write it. We're going to send it to the EC first. We'll get the EC's approval, and then we'll send it to the full council. And then if there's any objections, we'll just try to do it digitally. We'll do it just as you were revising the document now.
Exactly.
So we don't have to vote on it now, other than you can abstain maybe after it's written. Okay, great. All right, so then I will just say all in favor of writing on that. So we're gonna move on to the trust report.
That's a fast transition. All right, everyone, I will try to enunciate while also being speedy in the hopes that we can all get out of here a little early. And I think we have at least one item that I think will spark some discussion. So up front, I will say as always, construction is going well. At Pier 26, we are expecting our surgeons and the other play equipment to be delivered in June, which we're really excited about. I've seen some photos, they are well underway and frankly massive wood fish that you can play in. It's kind of amazing. We had as we reported last time, our first meeting for the SQRN back in February. The team is currently working with some of our education staff on some of the pieces that would go inside the building, as well as looking at some of the flood resiliency and other ways to try to get water in. They're really starting to do some initial pieces based on the great feedback that we're seeing from everyone. The tennis courts, right just south of Pier 40. Are going to be closing, I believe it's actually next week, for the week to do the final seal coat based off of the repaving. This was work that we'd hoped to get done late last fall, but ultimately the weather did not work in our favor. And so we had to hold off because it is temperature sensitive work. I think it's 5 days straight in a row with sunshine and over 50 degrees. And I think the first one of that is going to be next week. So we're expecting they're going to be closed for the week, but they should be open and then they will be good for hopefully a long while. Still, and Daniel had asked about this, no update on the 550 Washington crosswalk. I believe they are still waiting for Con Ed, but I have no information because we don't know when they are, what exactly the holdup is beyond that. And then I will say overall at Gansevoort, things are going well, but I want to hold on that for 1 second. Up Chelsea Waterside, things are going also going well. We actually hope to wrap up in mid-May on the site for the core of it. If and when we're ready, we'll all bring you for ribbon cutting. We just don't have an exact date yet. The field at Chelsea Waterside, which is currently hosting folks who've been displaced from the Pier 40 roof to rooftop fields during some roof work. We've moved them to Chelsea Waterside because it was unpermitted for the spring season based for the waiting of the construction. Unfortunately, we've identified some additional pieces in the turf that need to be some seams that need some repatching and some final work on some of the fence panels. So everyone will be moving back to the Pier 40 fields as per their current spring permits. Everyone will hold harmless, but the fields will be going down for about another 2 weeks in early May, and then should hopefully the Chelsea Waterside field as well as both rooftop fields should be all in full swing for the summer season. And I will say everything up at Pier 97 is going. If you haven't gone up to see some of the great pieces that have started to happen, the one and the sod is starting to go in, and you can really start to see it taking shape, which is amazing. With that, I'm going to pass it to Kevin, who can give us a brief update on Gansevoort.
Hi.
Wow.
I'm not sure I can do that.
I'm telling you, I move fast.
So I'm Kevin Quinn, I'm Senior VP for Design and Construction. I'm here to just give an update on Gansevoort in particular. Overall, it's going really well. I'm sure you see it as you walk by the Esplanade. You can look and see how things are moving. We're about to start the roof work on the comfort station. So when you're going down the bikeway, you can see we have some shoring up, and that roof will be poured over the next few weeks, and that'll be great. But what I'm specifically here to talk about is the kayak landing. because we ran into a little hiccup. So a while back, working with Graham and others, yeah, that one.
I recommended a beach made of sand.
That we call the beach.
Well, what we decided on with input from the boating community was a kayak landing that cuts kind of east-west at a slight diagonal into the river where kayakers could land their boats, come and then enjoy the park and then depart. And there was a lot of discussion about the materials and how that would be built and when it would be built. And what we decided on at the time was a kind of gravel substrate with a rubberized membrane about an inch thick, kind of like what you would see if you've ever been behind a bar, or if you look at behind people that are doing the checkout at Walmart or something like that. You'll see they're standing on kind of a rubberized thing with holes in it. And that was the finished surface of the kayak landing. And we picked that because it was soft and we thought it would be a smooth transition, and the slope of the kayak landing is an ADA compliant slope. So we wouldn't need any railings, and if you were in a wheelchair, you could use that, perhaps with some assistance, but it was a pretty smooth transition. And what we found is when we installed that system, basically late fall, early winter, and the rubberized system that we specified, the manufacturer, hopefully, not really, changed the product. They didn't change the name of the product or the model number or anything like that. So when we were very particular in construction and we checked these things, and it showed up and it unrolled and it was thinner and less robust, and also had more, it was more like tiles instead of a sheet. So we worked with the manufacturer to try and install it, and we did, and we tested it out. And over the winter, it really just didn't perform well. The oil would come in and it would pop up all these little fasteners, and the fasteners go through the rubber tile into the basically gravel. And through the gravel, there's another gravel. It's called a marine cell. It's basically a wire mesh basket filled with gravel. That's the actual structure below the finished gravel. Anyway, these wires go through the rubber system and into that marine cell, and they were snapping and popping, and they were not holding. They were abrasive. They would cut you the way they were breaking. And also, to our surprise, the rubber became very, very slippery. And you kind of never really know how things slime up in the Hudson River. Like some stone doesn't get the slime, some stone does. It's a matter of the density and velocity. In any case, this rubber material that was designed for this specific purpose is not working out. So the rest of it is good. As you walk by, you see the stone tiered seating and all that. That looks great. But when you see that green rubber stuff, it's not working out. So working with our engineers, talking with everybody, DEC, Army Corps, we've talked to everybody in the world about what we should do. And the end result is we're going to need to pour a concrete slab, basically like a traditional boat launch, concrete slab, the same geometry as what was there before. We're basically going to remove 8 inches of gravel that we've installed and replace it with concrete. We're going to do this at super low tides so that we don't pour in the water. We'll pour it when the tides are very low. There's one point at the very toe of the slope that needs to go a little deeper, and it's below the super low tide. So what we're going to do there is pour basically a box upland, wait for that super low tide, and then drop that box in. That'll be the toe of the slope, and then chase the tides and run up. And that's what we plan on doing. The finish of the concrete is going to be very similar. If you stand on the Esplanade and you look at this kayak launch from the public side now, you'll see that those tiers are made up of, some are recycled granite pieces from old bulkhead projects and what have you. Some are precast concrete that are fairly smooth. Other are precast concrete with some exposed aggregate. The finish of the boat, of the kayak landing, will have an exposed aggregate, so there'll be some texture to it. We thought about doing a smooth concrete with a broom finish, similar to what you see in a sidewalk. But we think the exposed aggregate will give a little bit more grit to the to the ramp. And we're gonna see how we're sure that that's a robust and permanent system, but I'm sure Graham and others are gonna say that maybe that's a little too aggressive for the kayaks. So whatever we do, the concrete is gonna be a firm, smooth substrate. And if we find that we need to add something to it, we can. If we wanna look at the rubber system again, we can fasten that to concrete, but this will give us a permanent, steady, robust system that we're confident will last. The rubber system that we thought was going to work out didn't even last one winter without any use. So that's the update on the kayak. I'm sure.
So would the entire area be this concrete, or would you actually have padding beyond the water?
It goes a little bit below mean low tide. Basically, if you stand there now, what is there is what was supposed to be our permanent installation. So anywhere where you see that green rubber would be replaced with the concrete slab. And we're going to tint the concrete to match the stone, so it's not like a white. Well, I'm ready. Just if you want references, there are beaches that have lasted more than 1 million years. We can provide those references. Concrete, not so long, right? But the issue is not, it's just there's boats and boaters. In our case, most of our boaters are not wearing shoes. So whatever surface you have has got to work for people in bare feet. So, and then of course, don't crash the boat either. And some people have big boats, like Rob, that have wheels, been around for 7,000 years, right? They're common. They prevent you from damaging the boat. So all these things kind of have to work. I'd like to add that we've thought about that. And that's one of the reasons I'm hesitant to add any material to the concrete, because when those fasteners fail and people are in bare feet, you have potentially fasteners that can people in boats. And so I would prefer to keep the concrete tested out, see if it works. I'm sure it's safe, absolutely sure it's safe. And if we find that we need to add something to make it more usable for boaters, we can take a look at that, but be very sure that those fasteners are not full.
Any questions online?
So what is the timeline for making the decision?
We're pretty solid on this because we think it's the only solution. We've looked at everything. So we're ready to move forward. We're coordinating. We've talked to all the regulatory authorities to support this solution. So we're ready to go. We're basically waiting to see if how much we can do before we get into the tidal area and whether DEC will think that's a good idea or not. So we're coordinating with DEC on when that could be very soon.
I'm sure spent a lot of money on buying the first product that was in the manufacturer did not tell you about. Was there a second choice product that was almost as good that you would have replaced it versus going to concrete? And are you getting a refund on the first one because it doesn't live up to what the manufacturer promised?
It's a very complicated situation because our contractor, who we hold the contract with, provided what was specified. The manufacturer changed what he said his product was. So to pursue it, we really need to sue the material maker, which is something we're considering doing. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge amount of money. We're talking about maybe $80,000 difference here overall on a multi-million-dollar project. But we are looking at it. I mean, we're pretty upset about it. As you can imagine.
So this product is no longer being used for this purpose?
Not by us.
But it's still being used by others? for this
It's
purpose?
still being advertised. Well, I'm not aware of anything.
So I don't think we should go on too long because it's pretty specific to a small stakeholder group, but there is a May 4th meeting or May 5th meeting that we've scheduled. And I just want to make sure, is that meeting about this issue or is that meeting about the larger question of how, under what conditions this ramp gets used?
So
Or is it about both of those things?
we can definitely hope we can definitely talk some more about this with the user groups, and I think particularly some of the conversations around will be asked others about what we want to do moving forward. I think the general focus of that is one of the meetings that folks we have said that we were interested in having, and folks have asked for, would just be to drill a little bit more on sort of how we expect to use the landing. And then those are the pieces that I don't want to. I'm being trying to be respectful at everyone's time. I think that topic's gonna be pretty robust. So I wouldn't want to promise that we're going to spend a lot of time on this there. It is something that we are, once we have it in place and we start seeing how it's performed, we will be able to have more conversations about it, about the season, because it's Dan's work is not expected to open until the fall, late summer, early fall. So we won't have much of this season for it, but we will have some more experience with seeing how the concrete actually does perform. And then we have to have conversations about things like operational issues about the sliming of the concrete and all of that also. But we won't know that until we see it.
So see if you guys can still get a beach after all, right? All right, we're gonna move. Is there anything else from trust report that I'm talking about programmings and all the fun
Yeah,
stuff?
no, this was like right at the beginning. But I, always try to move fast. So I want to give folks just a short update from our river project. We actually just launched a pilot initiative that we're really excited about with CUNY. And so we are working with CUNY. It's a grant for us, and it's a pilot initiative where we are faculty can apply for research funding they're working with us directly on it. So we have shared our ESMP and sort of the vetted research initiatives that of the park. And so we are asking faculty members, and they can apply, and we'll select hopefully 2 projects of up to $10,000 each. We are working with them as part of our sort of collective, both our institutions' interest in environmental education and bringing up the next generation of leaders. And so we are there's a preference for projects that include student researchers as part of it, although the project would be led by CUNY faculty themselves, and that's how these things usually work. So faculty lead it, and then they work with the students who work on the project. It's a really great, our partnership with CUNY is something that we are incredibly proud of, and something we are working very hard at fostering. And so we're really excited to be able to sort of take this to a new level with it. The park brings not only just access to the river, but we also have our supplies. We have our expert river project team of educators and researchers as part of our team. So we're really hoping that it is a continuation of our real partnership. We are also, as you guys have heard before, and we host CUNY students as part of our seasonal education team and as part of our student leadership program, where they come in and CUNY students help mentor upcoming high school students on science research in the park. One of our posters over there in the corner is the part of that. You can see about microplastics. Last year, when you guys came to the wet lab, you saw ones about boluses. So it's really an exciting piece, but this is sort of our first time that we're able to really help try to bring in that research component in this way with the faculty. So it's a new initiative, it's a pilot, we're trying it, but one we're really excited to try to do as part of our sanctuary initiatives. Our public programs we will be announcing in the next weeks, and I'm looking around for some of our staff because I'm waiting for the draft press release. Our summer season, we're really excited. It is our 25th anniversary, so we have expanded some of our programming, a return from a lot of our great concerts, a lot of our dances and all of that. So you will all get that soon, and then I will wrangle each and every one of you to come out to at least one of our programs because they're really quite fun. And then on Hort water is going on, Hort facilities water is going on throughout the park. We got a bunch of email complaints that the water was not on the incredibly unseasonably warm week last week, but it is in fact going on now. And it's post-freezing. It's not as easy as turning on a faucet. You have to check a lot of miles of pipe throughout the park. It is quite an endeavor involving a lot of our team, but it should all be on this week. Just I'll move it forward, talk about the bikeway. Oh, this is one that everyone's gonna be interested in hearing. So the sidewalk in front of the Manhattan Cruise Terminal, so that's West 46th to West 48th Street. There is a outfall, a CSO, a DEP outfall underneath it. It has, I think my understanding is some erosion. There's a subsurface condition in which the sidewalk is, the DEP and New York State DOT have determined that they do not believe the sidewalk is necessarily safe at the moment. It is currently closed. Folks who are moving between West 46th Street and West 48th Street are detoured either across 9A or onto the bikeway for that section. And it is ultimately that section, that part of it, because of, and I tried to understand this, and I'm not going to do a great job explaining it. That part of the section of that sidewalk is actually also part of Route 9A and the bikeway, so it's actually not the parks, as I understand it. So it is not ours, it is theirs, and it means that it is ultimately theirs to fix as part of it. And it is, in city parlance, it is DEP's hole. Everyone gets to determine whose hole it is. It might be Con Ed's, it might be DOT's, it might be ours if it's a bulkhead issue, but this hole is DEP's assuredly because it is from the CSO. So I will share more information with that as we get it, but we are also waiting for more information for it. It is, we know, a major north-south corridor through to connect the pieces of the park.
Clarifying.
Yep.
It gets, this is just south of where it's already less than the legal ADA width for the pedestrian walk zone on the west edge of the greenway.
So it's when you hit the Intrepid and it jumps in short in front of them because of the MARSAC requirements, where you used to have a path along on the water side.
Right.
That was part of the cruise terminal. And when the MARSAC post 9/11 came in and they closed that section, and they have what is essentially a state DOT sidewalk, it is that section from there to 48th Street.
That in some places is less than 3 feet wide.
And you are detoured either onto the greenway or across 9A at 46th Street.
This is the widest section, actually, of that whole strip.
It's north of Intrepid or south?
It's north of Intrepid between 46 and 48.
It's really narrow.
Between 46 and 48.
40th Street entrance to the terminal. Yeah.
It's that section that's separated by, there's like a railing, it separates, it's 14
I
feet
think you are
wide.
thinking of the block just
North of it, right?
Yeah. I'll say we're all here on the opening 57. Oh yeah, I got two more. So you all saw our comments that we submitted last month. We emailed them around on US hats on the resiliency piece. I'd encourage you all to read them. I will not summarize them any further unless you have questions. We have had a lot of discussion about it. You should read it. It's a good letter, and I want to thank Rashi from our team here who really helped lead it. We have also been speaking with Battery Park City regarding their project as well. We have been working, we are very interested in, I think as many here, in some coordinated conversations around it, specifically between with us, cities DOT and state DOT, because all as we have discussed already, although the bikeway is not ours, having pieces immediately along the bikeway ultimately do have impacts on the park, particularly for some of the operational pieces. So we are interested in trying to unify those conversations as well. Have been talking to them about it. And I don't think we have shared this one yet, so I'll end on a lovely note. That Friends has done their year-end wrap-up for 2022. I think it came out sort of in March, so I think after last meeting. Friends, who we deeply appreciate, hosted 110 volunteer events in 2022 with 2,200 volunteers. They are a major source of support for our horticulture team. We would not be able to have the level of maintenance and gardening that we have in the park without these 2,200 volunteers over 110 different events. They have just launched this past Saturday their 2023 volunteer season. They are sort of doing it every day this week with Earth Week, which is where we have a lot of corporate volunteers who come in and do big sections. And they are fully booked for all of their volunteer sessions through July. And this year they are actually expanding. I believe we're having 2 teams running at a time. So we expect those numbers to continue to grow. They are a major source of support for our horticulture team. So we wanted to share that. And that's it. And there are some other things I skipped in here. You should all read the report.
I just had a question about the Battery Park City Authority project, and I may have missed a meeting where this was presented to this group, right? Like
No, we're actually hoping to put it on the agenda next month.
okay, our new business. All right. So I'll hold.
We'll jump onto that in a moment.
So when, on the estuarium, Robert, when will the next readout be of the work?
We don't have it scheduled yet. We are working with the team and it's kind of, they have to do their preliminary work and we're not fully sure exactly how that is. It will be later this year, I expect, but we need to have that, they need to have their heads sort of wrapped around it in a better handle before we schedule. We come back to folks with something. We want to have something to share back for it. We did our first meeting, which was much more of an intaking, letting them hear from community interests and all of that. And then the next one, we want to be able to share some pieces back that folks that are new to folks rather than asking folks just to weigh in conceptually again.
At some time, you think in the next 3-4 months?
I'm not sure over the summer, maybe in the fall, but I don't want to speculate too much because I honestly am not totally sure.
Any other questions about the report? Okay, without objection, I'm going to move on to the next item of the agenda, which is just a quick update from the safety committee and head it back to Mary.
Hi there. Yeah, we had a really good meeting with Robert and Rob and Chris McGann and primarily Christina Singh, who's now the director of operations. And we had sent the trust a list of questions from our previous meeting, and they answered every single one. But some of the initiatives are a little bit new. For instance, they presented some coatings they feel will work to help create a surface that's harder for graffiti to attach to, but they haven't gotten them in stock yet. So I think it's something we want to follow up later and see how some of those items get implemented and how it works out. We're really pleased that they were talking to a group of the skateboard community who have already adopted the skate park further north to get ideas for how they can control graffiti at the hot spot at Pier 25, the skate park there. I think right now there's not anything for the full advisory council to address. We were also really happy to find out that budget-wise, there was actually pretty small impact. They're spending less than $30,000 a year on cleanup, both for staff and supplies. So that way it's not a big impact. Obviously visually and how the public sees it is quite different. But in spite of it making into a couple of their monthly reports, it's not a big deal budget-wise. So I think they're looking at things, they're listening, and I think we'll just check in a couple of months and see how it's going.
I'll just want to add one of the key strategies for graffiti is to not let it build up, right? Is to take care of it quickly. The major point of graffiti is a point of pride of seeing it up, and if it is not worth staying up, if it comes down immediately and you don't get the visual of it, it makes it less worthwhile for people to tag and discourages people from tagging more in the future. So one of the things we ask all of you, as many of our eyes and ears in the community and in the park, is that if you see graffiti, let us know. You can reach out to any one of us. You can call it into the operations desk. You can shoot us an email, but let us know, because sometimes, although we are out in the park, and particularly Rob's teams are out in the park day in and day out, folks may see things that we don't, or in the shorter time that we can have things up, the better. I think for the most part, and Rob can speak to this, we have usually about a 24-hour takedown period. So most things are erased within 24 hours. And it involves a lot of scrubbing and power washing and work from his team. But the faster we know about it, the better we can get into our system, and the sooner we can get someone to take care of it. So please help us report it. It is, don't save items for here. Give us a shout as soon as you see it.
Well, I just wanted to say it's a great example of committee work, working with the trust and actually making progress. And I think it's a great sign, and we should continue to do so. And also it's better to talk not at these meetings, but doing things on a committee level, actually get more progress that way. So anybody who wants to open up a committee to talk about a specific point, let me know, like ramps and cons board, things like that. But anyway, moving on. Objection. We're going to go into new business. We have a discussion that's not a full agenda item, but we do want to talk a little clarity on and I think Mark is going to introduce it.
Yeah, I was curious about the signage at the Pier 26 lay-by changed recently. There's now like a large sign saying no passenger pickup or drop off subject to a summons. And I was just curious where that was coming from.
Is it white, black, white, big sign, black lettering?
I think
Long?
so, yeah, long sign.
It's the same that's been on all the laybys. We have the same in front of Little Island.
So yeah, the laybys are always, I feel like I'm going to explain these things a million times.
I think there was
so
a
the laybys are
smaller
technically part of the
sign.
highway.
It's like
Although we, the
footer.
trust has permission to use them for short periods and temporarily, they are technically with state DOT, so we do have to coordinate on it. So we can double check to see what it is, but it's true that the laybys are not for passenger pickup and drop off. That's not what they're designed for.
What are they?
A safety pull off, deliveries, like those sorts of things. It's not actually supposed to be for passenger pickup and drop
So
off.
we
That
had
limo I walked by out there on the way in, that was for
Yeah.
delivery.
I mean, one assumes someone who's not doing something they're supposed to be. Just because it's there doesn't mean that it is in fact following the rules.
My one comment about that is having had and hosted a meeting at the lovely downtown boathouse with people who were mobility challenged.
Whoa.
They needed to get picked up there, being hustled and hassled by the peps who were like, you can't get anybody to stop here. I was like, dude, she can't walk. Like, we're calling a lift, you just gotta deal with it. Because people are handicapped, they can't, there's no place from 25 and 26 to really get a pickup if they can't get across the street. So that's something that we could look to solve, that would be really helpful.
So to follow up on that, we had an incident of someone coming and the taxi didn't stop. They were disabled. They didn't want to walk across the highway. Taxi would not stop because of the sign. So maybe there's a solution.
Maybe
Those signs are regulated by state DOT, so it's something we can discuss with them.
So it's a DOT.
All
issue.
signage on the West Side Highway is regulated by the state DOT.
Yes, these are not our rules. I know everyone would love us if Hudson River Park had a greater purview, but it is they are regulated by state DOT. It is not our rule. It is not our design.
We'll go to Mary, who's got her hand up, but I could somehow hear Robert Atterbury going, phew.
Oh, well, I was gonna say, we've got some other things we've wanted to talk to state DOT about, and it seems to me like a simple thing would be that there's some kind of handicap logo where that's okay, other taxis not. Simple solution. So let's ask them.
Yeah, we have a letter going out, and hopefully they'll respond and we can bring up all the issues we have. So,
I will say right here at 14th Street Park, you'll see the lay-by here on the west side is not for taxis, pickups and drop-offs. They did as part of, I believe it's one of the pieces for 57. There is a taxi pickup and drop-off on the east side over by 14th Street Park. And that is also signed. And so it is something that they have considered. But again, it is not something that we actually directly control because it is the highway.
Okay, and then, any other conversation on it?
Separate.
Separate, we're gonna make actually, I'm gonna hand it over to co-chair Tammy, who's gonna talk about a little bit about the battery park resiliency plan.
So, the February 16th meeting that Battery Park City Authority calls Reach 1 and 2 is completely surrounding the very bottom of the park, going north, or north more. So you're talking the back of Chambers along where the mooring sites are, and then going up potentially the bike path, but we don't know whether it's gonna go up the bike path, 9A, middle of the median. The only confirmation at that meeting is it cannot be on the east side of West Street between Chambers and Harrison at a base minimum. Problem is that the information that was shown on the February 16th meeting that some of us went to did not include the final engineering information back from State DOT, Con Ed, and others about the subsurfaces below 9A. So therefore, none of the conceptual conversations that we had could really be sussed out in any kind of a super productive way in terms of the connections. Because when you look at beautiful things along the back of Chambers Street that needed to connect going north, and then we're connecting into some kind of protection and support system, they don't know where it's going to go. So my suggestion would be, based on what I know and what I've seen, I know the trust has been in dialogue with them, but I haven't seen that many, no offense to any of you who did come like Bram. I haven't seen what I would call many or enough of the advisory council going. It could be because you don't know and it's deemed Reach 1 and 2, so it doesn't really mean a lot to a lot of people. But I was wondering how the advisory council felt about requesting the Battery Park City Authority to come and do a presentation once the engineering is done and they actually know how the connections can possibly go. Because whatever they do, nobody wants a 20-foot wall that the HAT study was talking about, but whatever they do will have some effect on the park, on both. No, they're not going to block the crosswalks and getting there, but if they're going up the bike path, then all the trees come off the bike path. So I think it's a worthwhile endeavor to have a presentation for the Trust Advisory Council.
And when do you think they'll be ready by May? It's, May 16th, by the way, is our next tentative date, which would also be. So let's,
We can only ask.
let's we'll go ahead and ask, and maybe we'll get State DOT we'll invite them and see if they respond. But I think one of the letters is going to be going to New York State Department of Transportation's commissioner. So you very rarely get responses. How about the trust? Is trust, do you have any buttons you can press, or can
we can always
assembly members
share.
office?
I would definitely, may recommend we leverage our colleagues in government for the ask and keep that out of the trust's hand. We can count on.
And there are a few of us here.
Yeah.
Senate office.
There's Wendy's online and.
And I think there's somebody who's like, I don't know, health facilities.
I did have a question, Tammy. I'm sorry. The presentation that you were suggesting Battery Park City come and give to this council, is that a proposal that's so far along that they're no longer taking feedback, or?
No, now is
So there
the
would be an
time.
opportunity to, okay.
Correct. Now is the time. And they have, I can share the links for what they, if we haven't done that already, for what has already come out from the February 16th meeting. So you can see the diagrams and things. The only thing that I knew when I walked out of there, once they said, we don't have a final answer on the engineering of how it connects, means that there's no point in opining if it's not gonna be there. Of course.
I think that's great. And I guess I would suggest potentially as part of that agenda to have the trust, not to, kind of put you guys on the spot, but have you guys kind of talk about what the scope of what you guys see as being some of the impacts or concerns that you would have from the Battery Park City's authorities or some of their alternatives.
So I think this is one of the ones that we shared before, but one of the things that we are most interested in seeing is some coastal modeling about the impacts, potential impacts of the water. We are in part concerned, and it is also reflected in our HATS comment about essentially rebound effects. So particular waves, a strong wave comes in and it hits the wall and then it comes out at a higher rate of speed. And we are concerned about that it may actually have more damage to the park than if there was nothing. That being said, and we have said this repeatedly, and but it bears repeating, like, if we are sacrificial, we understand that like life and property on the inland is important. But it is something as our responsibility as the park managers to ask for and voice. So it is something that we have asked for as part of this.
Yeah, I think, and then the other one would be any alienation of parkland or any potential alienation of use of parkland.
I think shade is a big concern when
Is it 9 trees or?
all trees. Any tree, if they go up the West Side Highway on the bike path, every tree within 15 feet has to go. That is the FEMA rules that they're working by. I've asked for all of the length of Battery Park City to find out if there's a different FEMA regulation that could apply in New York City, because we are not Mississippi and we are not the state of Florida. We don't have massive land masses to be able to manipulate around. In an urban dense environment on an island like this, if there was any consideration, quite frankly, even 4 feet makes a major difference, both for resiliency, but also for habitat life if you're going to be at the trees. And think about all the birds and everything else that we have, losing every tree from Chambers up to Northmore on the west side or in the middle, because now our medians are all green.
It's also just the height of irony that they want to remove something that otherwise actually helps to keep storm surges at bay. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if we can get them to the table.
Great. So, no offense, but
Yes, Erica?
I would just say, obviously, it's also going to be a safety issue. The other side of a wall, if you're running at night or something, you feel like you're hidden. Right now, you have the opportunity to jump into the highway for safety.
Right.
If there's a wall, nobody sees the other side.
Just be a robust conversation.
That's the goal, and they are doing outreach, so I'm hopeful that this could be a pit stop on their outreach for. We'll
Any-
share the link.
Any other new business to be raised?
Question for Robert. I think it's called the Shark. Is it that cleans the?
Waste shark.
Yes. Is it being deployed yet, or will it be?
So we are working on deployments right now. We've done some test runs. When we are excited about it. Its ultimate home will be at Gansport, and it is.
Shark at Gansport.
Its ultimate home is going to be at Gansport, where which we think, and particularly with the ramp and others, that crook there between the two, that there in 51 is an area where you actually see a lot of debris build up, and so we think that it's going to be useful to have there, and it's also with the ramp we have a better deployment locale than off some of our docks. So it is something we have been testing and we're working with, and we're figuring out operationally on how to best deploy it in such a way that it does not accidentally end up washed out into the harbor.
A little bit of what this is.
So Lake Shark it's like kind of big, like a small table size, about this big. It is basically a water drone. It is a remote controlled thing, and it has a catcher bin in the front and then a little trailer one in the back. And so you were able to scoop up waste from it. So it's frankly
It's a
floating waste. So
Sleeper. It's a sleeper.
Water Roomba is in fact like a great description, except that it is remote controlled. My Roomba was not that fancy to be remote controlled, but like I understand some of the new ones might be.
I would have a lot of training to do.
Yeah. So it's exciting. It's part of our team. A river project team is working now, also with our operations team on trying to see if we can't step up some of our essentially cleanup in the water.
Is it right off the bulkhead? Is that where it's deployed? Where is it deployed?
So it's remote controlled, so it
can move anywhere.
It just goes out in the water, which is in part, frankly, some of the concern.
But you're gonna store it in the upland, it'll come down the ramp. That's how you.
You have to carry it down. It's like it's a Roomba. It's a floating Roomba. So it's not gonna, it doesn't waddle down by itself as much as I wish it did. But we're hard at work and trying to figure out how to get it going. And then its ultimate home will be at Gansport, where I think will be easier to deploy than sort of we have it right now.
You expect it to cover what area?
Oh, we don't, and I don't know how, we don't know how operationally.
Got to pilot it.
We have to pilot it pretty significantly before we figure that out. How far it goes and how autonomous it can be is a question. Like if we send it too far out, is it again a not cheapest machine out in the harbor?
It's got a carrying capacity. It can only hold so much.
Yeah.
So it's
How much did it cost?
We got a grant.
Yeah, I think it was
30,000?
Yeah, I think it was like $30,000,
It was
which like
fully
it'd be like,
funded by a state DEC grant,
It was
which
funded
is
by
funding
grant,
education.
but if you put your Roomba on a sidewalk, you next to a roadway, you'd be concerned. So that's how we feel.
It's super cool and it could do really cool social media. I mean, maybe they would donate another one if it's, if.
I considered putting googly eyes on it, but I have been told not yet because they're made of plastic.
Yeah, so this summer, we're gonna be using it as part of our science leadership program. Where once Gansevoort opens, that's when we're hoping to do the public programs with it, pairing it with shoreline cleanup and then having the in-water option too. So it's a really nice complement to the shoreline work that we've been doing, and we will learn more about its capacity. But so far, it's working quite well. And it's more that we need to just investigate how it works in the hot spots where the trash really comes.
I see
And it does build up.
New York Times story in this.
No, I
And the
know, but we
shark
have to actually
going
not have it
down.
wash out to the
Oh.
harbor the day that they're coming, Like I do too. I work on the communications team and I was like, yeah, no, we have to wait.
Any other new business?
Just a quick announcement that City of Water Day is July 15th this year, and here it's I think folks know what it is, but it's the largest waterfront festival in New York and New Jersey, and it's been, I think this is the 16th year. We do it with Waterfront Alliance. Carrie and Tina often do great programs in association with it, and I want to say that we do have small, thanks to EPA and Congress and New York City Ferry, we have small grants available. So if folks register and apply, definitely look forward to reviewing your application.
Maybe for another shark. Shark.
It's not that much. It's not enough money. It would, but you could do like a little party, a shark party. But the grants are like 1,000 to 5,000, so it's for the fun stuff, but you could
The
do.
googly eyes.
The googly eyes, yeah, exactly. Perfect.
Environmentally friendly.
Perfect.
Any other new business?
Well, if I could do a quick announcement too, Lilac's been in dry dock. She's supposed to go back in the water on Monday. And we're gonna stay at the shipyard for about another week after that, finishing up some stuff. So we should be back to Hudson River Park in about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And opening on Memorial Day weekend.
Second on the motion to adjourn.
We're gonna be holding our meetings here, right, Robert?
Yeah.
So, May, what did I say?
16.
May 16th.
Can I ask you about here?
Yes.
So it'll be on Zoom and it will be also in person.
The last
So
piece is
see you
gonna be
here if
available.
you're able to make it. Thank you, everybody. for attending.
We are gonna set the classroom back up, so if you put people in the gallery, that'd be very helpful for us.
Change
Yes,
the
to the gallery.
something.
Yeah.